Although Mario was one of the most well-known video game characters in the entire world, there's still a lot of mystery behind the mustachioed man, especially as the games aren't usually story-driven, and on top of that, Nintendo is pretty secretive about their reasonings. This exact topic gave me the idea for today's video, where I want to look at little-known facts about every Mario game, going through certain moments in the series that you may not know about, or Nintendo may not want you to know about. And I guarantee you'll learn something you never knew. Oh yeah, and before we get started on this, my name is Copycat, and if you haven't yet, then please subscribe to my channel, hitting that bell to stay notified when I upload new videos. The very first game in the mainline series, simply titled Super Mario Bros., was released for the NES in 1985. And believe it or not, if it wasn't for famed cartoon character Popeye, this probably would never have happened. This little known fact all starts with Nintendo having the idea of creating a barrel-based platforming arcade cabinet with the spinach-eating, muscle-having sailor as its star, basing the damsel in distress after his love Olive Oil, and his enemy after his nemesis Bluto. This was Shigeru Miyamoto's idea, but it quickly became clear that Nintendo wouldn't be able to get the rights to use the characters. So he then shifted things to a more King Kong themed style, creating the titular character Donkey Kong as the antagonist, and the protagonist being Jumpman at that time. This of course is the platformer that would eventually become the plumber we all know and love today. This all spawning out of losing the rights to a character that nowadays is pretty much forgotten and no one talks about. The second game to come out in the series, at least specifically in Western markets, is Super Mario Bros. 2 for the NES, which has a few little known facts I want to look at, starting with this entry's really strange origins. Okay, at this point, I feel like I've beaten a dead horse by telling you guys that Nintendo felt like the true Japanese sequel to the original would be too difficult for the Western audiences. So instead they took a game that was created with Mario platforming in mind, titled Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic, and reskinned it as they felt like it would perform way better. They were definitely right, and what we got was one of the most unique experiences in the franchise, that ended up taking aspects from it that would become staples with each release. Which is interesting considering the game has a very Middle Eastern theme, and at first glance literally looks nothing like the Mushroom Kingdom. Another fact that some people may not know about is that the events of this title are all technically in a dream, which is definitely a way of explaining why things in this realm are so drastically different. Now this really isn't evident at all until you complete the game, where there's a scene revealing that Mario's been asleep the entire time, and the subcon world is located in some sort of shared dreamscape. This twitch was actually revealed if you had read the game's manual, which says that the big baddie, Wart, is the terrorizer of dreams, so the only way you'd ever see him is if you were asleep. The final of the original trilogy is Super Mario Bros. 3, released for the NES in 1990, where one fact about it that I had no clue about is that they had to change the official name of the mushroom as it was seen as too controversial. This new version was called the Super Mushroom, originally called a magic mushroom, which if you didn't know, has drug-related connotations, as in real life, this is the thing people ingest if they want to hallucinate. I really just think during that time in the late 80s, early 90s, there was such a push to eliminate any drugs at all from society as a whole, including any tame references whether they're intentional or not. Nintendo probably just didn't want to make anybody mad, so they changed the name to what we're used to today. The final fact that even I had no clue about is that the area the Castle of World 3 is located in looks a lot like the country of Japan. I never noticed this, as I never thought to connect the world of the Mushroom Kingdom with the actual world of Earth, but Nintendo clearly just wanted to pay homage to their homeland, even if it's in a very subtle way. Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels was released in Western markets in the Super Mario All-Stars bundle, and is that true Japanese sequel that was deemed too hard and too alienating for Western audiences. So because we've already talked about that fact, I want to mention something else, which is that almost every person I know that's played this game absolutely hates it. I don't even think it's the difficulty that's the main complaint. It's really just the poor level design, as there's so many instances where you can get stuck and will need to either die somehow or wait until the timer to retry. This extends to the atrocious maze-based stages where you need to guess the right direction to travel in or risk going all the way back to the start. Honestly, something no one wants to worry about in a Mario game. The first handheld game to be released in the series is Super Mario Land for the Game Boy, which if you didn't know, was the first game starring Mario not to be designed by Miyamoto himself. Here, Nintendo R&D 1 and legendary video game developer Gunpei Yokoi helmed this project. And this can almost definitely be seen, as this feels different than anything we've come across before. It's hard to find info on why Miyamoto was excluded or chose not to participate in this title's development, but I've seen theories that either speculate this never was meant to be as big of a deal as it turned out to be, or that he wasn't needed since old assets were just reused for this one. Either way, no reason was officially given for his absence. The only entry from the series we're going to look at from the SNES is Super Mario World, which has one really cool unknown fact in that the Koopalings are all named after famous celebrities or singers, albeit a few of them might be a bit obscure, especially for the younger audience. These include Morton Koopa Jr., being based off Morton Downey Jr., who was a television talk show host during the late 80s. I mean, there's definitely a resemblance there. Wendy O. Koopa, who is based off the American singer Wendy O. Williams, not to be confused with Wendy Williams, although that low-key would have worked better. There's Iggy Koopa, who's based off the iconic punk rocker Iggy Pop. There's Roy Koopa, who's based off old-timey singer Roy Orbison, even equipped with his memorable sunglasses. There's Lemmy Koopa, who's based off Lemmy Kilmister, who is the frontman for the famous Motorhead band. And finally, Ludwig von Koopa, probably the most obvious of these all, based off of composer Ludwig van Beethoven, even spouting his classic crazy hair. Just as a note, the dinosaur-like Reznors are also named after a famous musician in Trent Reznor, who is well known as the mastermind behind the band 9 Inch Nails, but nowadays does many soundtracks for movies. I won't lie, some of these references are way out of date, even for the time of this game's release, and I doubt that many people picked up on these nods. Next up, we're going to look at one little known fact from the Super Mario Land 2 Game Boy entry, which is that Nintendo included an Easter egg to a product released years before they even became famous for creating video games. This is a reference to the N and B blocks that can be found throughout the Mario Zone stages, which was Nintendo's version of Lego bricks, although with slightly different shapes. Lego would actually end up suing due to copyright infringement, but wouldn't succeed due to it being that different. Although that doesn't mean that it was popular and would be completely discontinued just a few years later. The very first 3D-based game in the series is Super Mario 64 for the N64, which has one unknown fact that might surprise many fans, in that it actually only runs in 32 bits. Don't get me wrong, this is still a huge step up from the SNES's 16-bit processing power, and was only utilized to ensure that the games ran incredibly smoothly, as well as being able to take up less storage so they could fit way more content within it. I think it's really just the fact that it's called Super Mario 64 on a system called the N64, which makes me feel like Nintendo was just lying about everything, but in the end, the product is amazing, so I guess who cares. Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube is next up in this video, which has a cool little known fact, in that this game is actually the inspiration for the Splatoon series. Something while writing this video I actually never realized, but it does make sense. First off, the fact that the paint-like goop is the main focus of this game is one of the biggest similarities. Although in this case you are clearing it instead of spreading it everywhere. Although with a device you'd probably find in that multiplayer setting. On top of all that, there are apparently supposed to be a versus mode where one person would play as Shadow Mario, the Bowser Jr. entity, spraying paint on the stage, and the other would be Mario with the FLUDD, needing to clear it from that stage until the time runs out. This, of course, is literally what the entirety of the Splatoon gameplay is based around, but instead with teams battling to paint the arena, where whoever has the most at the end is the winner. This creates an obvious link between the two series, and the fact that they both take place in tropical-like settings is just the icing on the cake. Nintendo would return the series to its 2D roots with new Super Mario Bros. For the dual-screen system, with a little known fact I want to mention being that this one is sort of the spiritual sequel to that Super Mario Sunshine entry we just looked at. Not only is Bowser Jr. once again the main antagonist until you have to face off against his dad Bowser at the end, but this is actually mentioned directly in the game's manual, where there's an excerpt that reads, "Didn't Bowser Jr. once think Princess Peach might be his mother?" Which of course is for some reason what the Kid Koopa thought the princess was in the previous game. He doesn't really outright say this in this one, but he does seem to have some sort of infatuation over the princess, just like his father. Next to be released is the space-based Super Mario Galaxy entry for the Wii, which has one little known fact that's worth mentioning, in that the idea behind this one's mechanics can be traced all the way back to 1997. Some of you might have heard that the initial idea was to release a sequel to Super Mario 64 on a system add-on called the 64DD. And many gameplay elements were actually completed for this fabled second entry until it was ultimately cancelled due to its perceived failure. This leftover content was turned into a tech demo for the GameCube titled Super Mario 128. Sporting aspects from different Nintendo franchises, like the rapid object generation from Pikmin, movement physics from Metroid Prime, and of course the sphere-based platforming, later used in this game we're talking about, Super Mario Galaxy. There's very limited footage of this game, and I don't believe a real version was ever playable, but it's clearly the precursor to the wacky physics seen in this space adventure, something many people may not have known about. Also, just as a note, I think it could be interesting to look at every tech demo ever made in the Mario series, so if that's something you're interested in, then please let me know in the comments below. The second entry of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series came out for the Wii in 2009, which has one somewhat unknown fact in that this game actually leaked weeks before its release, resulting in it being shared online to millions of people. This all started after a small store in Australia accidentally put the game up for sale way before its intended release date, where a man named James Burt saw this, decided it would be a good idea to pirate it, releasing it online for download for free weeks early. As you could have guessed, this greatly angered Nintendo, and they quickly sued for damages, winning millions in the lawsuit, pretty much because James was not really being secretive about his endeavors. Nintendo is definitely known to be pretty ruthless when it comes to people stealing their intellectual properties, and they love making examples out of those who cross the line. The second entry in the short-lived Super Mario Galaxy sub-series came out for the Wii in 2010, where the only thing I want to mention are the mental gymnastics that Nintendo attempts to pull off to explain why Yoshi can survive in space. When you come across this sign in the Sky Station Galaxy, it oddly reads, "Hello, I'm out helping some friends right now. Sorry if I missed you, signed by Yoshi, the Space Dragon." Apparently the word dragon and dinosaur are somewhat interchangeable in Japanese, so I'll let that one pass. But the need to designate it as Space Base is a bit puzzling, as it's not like Mario's wearing a suit or helmet to breathe in this hostile environment. Next up is the very unique Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS, where there's just one small unknown fact I want to look at that all has to do with a devastating earthquake that resulted in a catastrophic tsunami hitting Japan in 2011. According to Miyamoto, this game was initially intended to be a much more difficult experience, more akin to the Super Mario Sunshine or the Super Mario Galaxy entries. But this quickly changed after the natural disasters, with Nintendo now just wanting to create a fun experience that took people's minds off the tragedy. This is why this title is very simple and perfectly pays homage to the past entries of the franchise, bringing back feelings of nostalgia to whoever plays it, becoming a much more positive experience than just being frustrated. The third installment in the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series is strangely given the moniker of being the second, and was released for the 3DS in 2012, where most people may not know that this game was originally called something a bit different. Apparently in early development, it was titled New Super Mario Bros. Gold, which honestly would have made more sense, as the majority of the power-ups you collect turn the mustachioed man to gold, giving him certain boosted abilities that usually allow you to collect tons of coins. Apparently they strayed away from this title as they thought that there weren't enough gold-based levels to quantify calling it that, but in my opinion, it would have better detailed what this pretty easy experience is all about. The final installment of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series came out for the Wii U in 2012, and has one little known fact that actually led to one of the most controversial memes of all time, Bowsette. This all stems from the Toadette character that was introduced in the Switch's deluxe remade version of the game, where with them you can collect the Super Crown power-up and become Peachette, a weird sort of grown-up version of the Toad that looks a lot like Peach. I don't know if this is insinuating that Toadette all grown up turns into Peach, or that Peach once was Toadette. I'm not sure, let me know in the comments. Now, this got fans thinking about what would happen if Peach collected this power-up, and they came to the conclusion that this would create Bowsette, a very insane mashup between the princess and the King Koopa. Something on paper that might seem cool, but of course people took it way too far. Even though Nintendo themselves admitted they thought of this idea originally, they ended up scrapping their version called Koo Peach as they just thought it was too out of place. So you could imagine that they were absolutely appalled by the fan art that was being created, as it was way too lewd for their normal family-friendly stance. Nintendo went as far as even wanting some of these images taken off the internet,
But in the end, I guess they felt like the publicity was good, even though it was sorta weird. Up next, I want to look at one small little known fact from the Super Mario 3D World entry for the Wii U, which revolves around the reason why clear pipes exist. This obstacle apparently was the mastermind of the game's director, Koichi Hayashida, as he always had a fascination with wondering what Mario looks like when he's traveling through warp pipes. This is really nothing special at all, but at least sorta cool to see what's inside, and adds a new gameplay mechanic of being able to control where the characters go within the pipes. One fact I had no clue about regarding the massive Super Mario Odyssey Switch entry is that it was the only game in the entire franchise that received over an E rating, here being recommended for kids 10+. The reasons given by the ESRB for this were the way certain enemies were defeated, the army depiction through the Sherm enemy who shoots real-life projectiles, the hard punches delivered by and delivered to Bowser, and the strange actions and functions of the Kukatil boss. And I am glad that Nintendo decided to appeal a bit more to all ages, but honestly I'd still probably allow my kid to play this, that is if I had one. The final we're going to look at in this video is the Bowser's Fury game mode that was included with the re-release of Super Mario 3D World for the Switch, which you may not know is actually some sort of spiritual successor to the Super Mario Sunshine entry, although minus the FLUDD. This can literally be seen right away at the beginning of the game by the way you enter Lake Lapcat, which is via an M made of goop, just like you would in that GameCube title. When you get to this mysterious area, you immediately notice that it's set within a tropical paradise, which is another similarity. Although this place is surrounded by goop, which is what powers the gigantic Fury Bowser. You also meet his son Bowser Jr. early on, who this time takes your side against his father, equipped with his paintbrush from the previous title, using it here to uncover secrets and attack enemies for you. Finally, there's a Shadow Luigi that's very similar to the form that Bowser Jr. took to taunt Mario, here needing to chase them down to gain one of the mini cat shines. I do wish they did delve a bit deeper into certain concepts for this game, as it really feels like this is more just like a tech demo or showcase than anything else. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below what you thought about it, and of course subscribe to my channel. Also, please go follow my Instagram at Copycat Gamer. There I'll put some cool clips and items from my collection that you won't see anywhere else. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!